When was the last time you did something for the first time? You remember that feeling of hesitation. Maybe you're not ready. Perhaps you're not good enough. You doubt yourself. It's a long road ahead. And right now you think, safe is a good place to be. You take a step back, but in doing so, you see the whole picture. You remember the stakes you were brave enough to take. So you shout at the unknown no longer, because you are your own master. You rise up, because you know you're not alone. Because you stand on the shoulders of the ones before you. And through them you realize you are more afraid of not trying than failing. They hold your hand, lead you to the peak of your potential. And once on top, you take the leap and do it. The first time you flew and tasted freedom. The first time you went the extra mile and never looked back. The first time you understood that something so small could change the course of your future. The first time you put yourself first. At First Metro Asset, we value you and your achievements. As we navigate through this better normal together, we are here to help you cherish your firsts and make those moments last.
In order to make our annual shareholders meeting event as successful and smooth-flowing as possible, we need your full cooperation and adherence to the following guidelines. This ASM is being recorded. Attendees' video and microphones are disabled by the host during the session to avoid interruptions. Due to logistical limitations of the meeting conducted virtually, open forum or discussion will not be possible during the meeting. However, stockholders may raise any relevant questions limited to the annual report by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant questions or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we gather once again for the annual stockholders meeting. Help us to engage in a meaningful discussion. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make right decisions, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit for the greater glory of God. May your goodness and love be present amongst us today. Come bless our academy, our board of directors, our president, the officers, the FAMI family, our partners, and our shareholders with unity, hope, and vision. We ask these things in your most holy name. Amen.
Welcome everyone to the 2022 First Metro Philippine Equity Exchange Traded Funds Annual Stockholders Meeting. Present on this event are the Board of Directors of First Metro Philippine Equity Exchange Traded Fund, Inc. Additional reminders to our shareholders. Shareholders who have completed the pre-registration requirements are qualified to vote. When the poll questions are launched, which will be flashed on your screen, you may cast your vote on the proposed resolutions by clicking your choice from the available options and then click Submit. Results of the preliminary voting will be presented after each poll. And lastly, final results will be included in the minutes of the meeting. I am now turning over the digital floor to Mr. Eduardo Carrion.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the year 2022 Annual Stockholders Meeting of First Metro Philippine Equity Exchange Traded Fund, Inc. In view of the ongoing pandemic situation and the implementation of the community quarantine, the company is unable to conduct this year's annual stockholders meeting physically. Instead, our meeting shall be via remote communication with the stockholders participating by electronic means pursuant to the rules of the Securities and Exchange Commission. The meeting will now please come to order. Ms. Secretary, have you sent the notice of this meeting, and is there a quorum for this meeting?
Mr. Chairman, the required notices were duly sent. This is to certify that the notice for the 2022 Annual Stockholders Meeting was published to notify the stockholders of record in the business sections of Manila Times and Manila Standard on June 1 and 2, 2022, in print and online format, and in the company's website in accordance with the SEC regulations. They are actually present in person or represented by their proxies by remote communication 20,648,596 common shares out of the 20,771,260 common shares outstanding. This constitutes 99.41% of the outstanding capital stock. We therefore have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
There being the required quorum, this meeting is therefore duly constituted for the transaction of the business in the agenda. Each item for approval in the agenda will appear in your screen, and stockholders participating can cast their vote by clicking the appropriate box. The votes of the stockholders who sent their duly accomplished forms with votes prior to the meeting will be shown on screen. The additional votes cast online shall be added to the result of preliminary voting. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the stockholders meeting held on June 17, 2021. The matters taken up in the said meeting were emailed to the participating shareholders and also published in our website. Is there any motion from the floor?
I am Marie Lorbis, stockholder of FAMI. Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the minutes.
I am Emmanuel Lagrimas, proxy for Katrina Santos. I second the motion.
The host will now launch the poll question. You may cast your vote by clicking on the available options.
We are now opening the voting poll for the approval of the minutes of the voting will now be closed. Mr. Chairman,
I now request the corporate secretary to present the preliminary voting results.
Based on the preliminary voting results, we have 99.41% who voted in favor, none voted against, and there are no abstentions.
There being a motion duly made and seconded, and the required votes obtained, and there being no objections for the approval of the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held on June 17, 2021, said minutes are approved. The next item in the agenda is the annual report of the stockholders. Ms. Karen Lisa Roa, FAMI President, will now render the report on operations and financial condition and MFFM ETF's performance.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors and shareholders. I am pleased to present the Fund Manager's report for the First Metro Exchange Traded Funds. So, all right, what we will do this afternoon is to present the 2021 results of operations, and we will also provide an update as of year-to-date figures ending May 2022. We'll start off with an executive summary with regard to the total assets under management. We'll provide some financial highlights, the fund performance versus peers and versus the benchmark, and we will then pass it on to the fund manager to provide a capital market outlook. So in summary, total assets under management had increased by about 16% from December 2020 to December 2021, from 1.887 billion to 2.187 billion. Gross sales, however, had declined year on year, ending December 2021 from the previous year of December 2020 by about 14%. The same, and there was also a decline in total net sales by about 5%. So for the year 2021, total gross sales generated was 345 million, and the net sales was about 262 million. For the 5 months in 2022, we had also likewise been able to increase the total AUM from the prior year. Currently, as of end of May, it stands at 2.163, a slight decrease from year end, but a 7% increase for the same period covered from the previous year. Gross sales, however, given the kind of market volatilities that we are all experiencing, we have seen a large decline in gross sales as well as in net sales. Gross sales for the first 5 months of the year is only about 77 million, and the net sales is about 64 million. This slide will show you the financial highlights of the First Metro Exchange Traded Fund as of December 2021. The shareholders' equity, the audited shareholders' equity reflects 2.186 or a 16% increase from December 31, 2020. The return on equity, however, shows a big increase from negative 3.13 to positive 1.91. The net asset value shows a 0.6% increase from 107 to 108. Okay. For the first 5 months of 2022, the shareholders' equity reflected a slight decline from 2.186 to 2.163 billion. ROE shows also a reversal from positive 1.91 to negative 1.64. Okay, as of the end of May 2022, we saw the index decline to 6,774, whereas the previous year, December 31, the index had closed at 7,122. Okay. NAV PS, on account of the decline in market values, has also seen a negative 3.8 decline from 108 to 104. Okay. If we take a look at the fund performance of the ETF as compared to its peers and the benchmark, we'll see that the ETF actually has outranked many of its peers, and it has also outranked or outperformed the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. So among all the passive funds in the mutual fund landscape, then you'll see that the ETF has actually outperformed them all, generating a return for the full year of December 31 of 0.67. Whereas the benchmark of the stock exchange generated actually a return of negative 0.24. So the other peers include Phil Equity PSE Index, the Philippine Stock Index Fund, Phil Equity, Sun Life, and Philam, and all of which we have been able to happily report that we have been able to outperform them. Okay, so the ETF, ladies and gentlemen, has been consistently since its launch been outperforming not only the benchmark, but also been able to outperform many of its peers. Okay. This one is as of May 31. You'll notice that we are still in the top tier for the first 5 months of the year, generating a return of negative 3.85 as compared to the benchmark of negative 4.89. So about 100 basis points better than the benchmark and about 50 basis points only behind the highest ranking index fund in the market. Okay. This slide will just reflect, the movement from 2013 of the price of the ETF. So as you will see, while it has been over the long-term range trading, there has been definitely opportunities within this range in terms of generating higher returns. Okay. Mr. Chairman, that's all that I have, and that's reporting the fund manager, report from the fund manager for December 31, 2021, as well as an update up to May 31, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roa. Due to logistical limitations of the meeting conducted virtually, open forum discussion will not be possible during the meeting. However, a stockholder will be given opportunity to raise any relevant question or express an appropriate comment limited to the annual report by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant question or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. Mr. Edsar Trinidad will now render the report on market outlook.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to our shareholders. For 2022, there are 3 points that an investor has to ponder. First is on the new administration. Second is on the Russia-Ukraine war. And lastly, on the global inflation. For the new administration, the key things that an investor has to look out for is how will the new administration will be able to sustain the economic reforms that the previous administration has done. During the time of the 30th administration, there are 4 key economic reforms that the administration had done. One of which is the comprehensive tax reform program. Second is on the Retail Trade Liberalization Act. Third is on the revised Public Service Act. And lastly, on the Build program that has really catapulted or improved the country's infrastructure. These are the key reforms that the new administration has to sustain in order to sustain our improving investment climate. In addition, this also should allow our country to maintain an investment grade credit rating. Maintaining such an investment credit rating is important in order to make our country to remain our country to be a preferred investment destination among foreign investors. Second is in the Russia-Ukraine war. And how come this is quite important? This event is important and has really affected the world's global economy. How come this is quite important? First, these two countries provided a big part of the country's commodity requirements. For Ukraine, it is a major exporter of wheat, corn, fertilizer, and it is also the second largest country in Europe by area. For Russia, it is the third largest oil producer, and it also supplies 60% of Europe's natural gas supply and 40% of the continent's oil imports. And because of that war, Western countries had embarked on an embargo on Russia's products, as well as due to the war, Ukraine had difficulty exporting its products. Due to this, a lot of key commodity products has gone through the roof, namely crude oil, natural gas, iron ore, corn, to name a few. And this has also exacerbated the continuing inflation that we have experienced in 2021, and it has moved to 2022. Last year, inflation has already been at a high range, considering that because of the reopening coming from the pandemic period, there has been an increased demand. Thus, the prices of key commodities has already risen. The war in Ukraine and Russia has exacerbated this problem, and it has been a problem in terms of the global economy. And the question is, what would be the end game? To be honest, this is quite too early to tell how long this conflict will end. So this is one critical area that an investor has to really follow. The second is on global economy, or rather global inflation. Because of the conflict, as I mentioned, there has been a lot of commodity prices that has gone through the roof, and it has really affected the cost of production of a lot of companies. Aside from that, because of the war, it has also disrupted the supply chain. So the supply chain, and because of the China's zero COVID policy restriction, global production has also slowed down. This has all brought forth increasing pressure on prices. And basically, as the Philippines is a net importer of fuel or oil, this has really affected our local economy's inflation. And with the continuing elevated oil prices, our inflation may remain to be high for the rest of the year. However, there's a flip side of this. With oil prices continue to be at record highs, Middle East companies benefit from this. So as a silver lining, because of the improved economy in the Middle East, there should be an increase of demand for Filipino workers. Thus, it might indirectly help us by increasing our remittances due to the higher deployment of Filipinos abroad. Another silver lining that is also, can be seen as a positive sign is our low COVID cases. Although there has been some spike in our COVID cases during the past weeks, it remained or nominal remains to be a low risk area. And hopefully we will be able to maintain this in order to provide us some caution from the effects of high inflation. Looking at the forecast of our broker partners, all of these factors has led them to revisit their EPS growth. They have started to cut down their EPS forecast in order to reflect the higher cost of inputs. As can be seen on the chart, from a median estimate of about 24% EPS growth for this year, they've already cut down to about 20.3% for 2022. We expect this number to go down further once second quarter results comes in. Their broker partners have also cut down their forecast on the peso dollar exchange rate, which I think they're also looking at a higher currency by year end due to the continuing strengthening of the US dollar. Looking at our performance, at least our performance relative to our peers in the global markets is not that as bad, considering that, as you can see here on the chart, our performance is basically middle of the rung. There are other countries that have really suffered in a much severe way in terms of their performance on the equities market. And I would like to point out that our valuation at 14.67 times is already below our mean average or median average for the past 20 years of 16 times. So what will be our outlook for the rest of the year? We see that the market will continue to be volatile. However, we don't expect that the market should drop as worse as what we had seen in 2020, because foreign ownership right now is currently at a record lows. So some selling pressure coming from the foreign investors should be minimal, considering that their ownership on Philippine companies is already at a low. So what do we expect for 2022? We expect that the PSE at best would be flat year on year because of the following reasons. We expect the reopening prospects and corporate earnings will be tempered by the rising cost. And we also expect that there should be some potential recovery in consumer confidence by the second half of 2022 should inflation start to ease. And what are the headwinds and tailwinds? For the headwinds, the main headwind is the unabated rise in inflation, which can lead to further aggressive policy response in order to control the rise of the prices. Because of these concerns and the continuing rise in our import bill, current account deficit may increase, and due to that, there might be a possibility of a credit downgrade. You also cannot discount a possible outbreak, a new outbreak of COVID cases, considering that there are still new variants that emerges in other markets and may spread here in the Philippines. And lastly, a prolonged Ukraine-Russia conflict would have a detrimental effect, not only in our country, but also the global economy. And what are the best possible tailwinds? We're hoping that the conflict, there will be some resolution in conflict, and that should be a very big push or a improvement in terms of overturning the sentiment in our markets. There's also possibility that with China coming out from their lockdown, we'll see an improvement in production, and that should also help in improving our supply chain. There's also historically a post-election optimism. Historically, after a year of a new presidential election, the market tends to move strongly after a year post-election. And lastly, a drop in commodity prices should therefore improve consumer sentiment. Will also help improvement or adjustments in corporate earnings due to better margins. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trinidad. We now move to the next item in the agenda, which is the ratification of all acts and resolutions of the Board of Directors and Management and all committees for the fiscal year 2021 of First Metro Exchange Traded Fund, including the following. A, renewal of the management distribution agreement with FAMI. Is there any motion from the floor?
I am Lloyd Laurilia, proxy for Clarissa Glino. Mr. Chairman, I move that all acts, transactions, and resolutions of the Board of Directors and Management and all committees for the fiscal year 2021 of FMETF, including the renewal of the management distribution agreement with FAMI and the minutes of meeting of the board and board committees, be ratified and confirmed.
I am Bel Pajarillo, proxy for Ms. Mary Love Alix. I second the motion.
The host will now launch the poll question. You may cast your vote by clicking on the available options.
We are now opening the voting poll for the ratification of corporate acts. And while we are at that, Mr. Carrion, may we request that you position your camera to the center so that our shareholders can see you better. Thank you, sir. The voting will now be closed. Mr. Chairman.
May I now request the Corporate Secretary to present the preliminary voting results.
Mr. Chairman, based on the preliminary voting results, we have 99.41% voted in favor, none voted against, and there are no abstentions.
There being a motion duly made and seconded, and the required votes obtained to ratify all acts and resolutions of the Board of Directors, Management, and all committees for the fiscal year 2021, including the renewal of the Management Distribution Agreement and the minutes of meetings of the Board and the committees of FMETF, the motion is carried. Next item is the amendment to the bylaws. May I ask Ms. Corporate Secretary to explain this to the stockholders?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Board of Directors, during their meeting held on December 16, 2021, approved the amendment to the bylaws of the ETF. These amendments are made to conform to the provisions of the revised Corporation Code, the Securities Regulation Code, and the Investment Company Act, as well as the implementing rules and regulations of the laws as aforesaid. The following are the amendments to the bylaws. 1. Amendment of Article 2, Section 4. Number 2, amendment of Article 2, Section 5 to add Section 49 of the RCC. Number 3, amendment of Article 3, Section 3 to delete the phrase owners of at least 1/3 of the total outstanding stock. Number 4, amendment of Article 3, Section 4 to align with the provisions in the RCC. Number 5, amendment of Article 3, Section 7 to align with the provisions of the SEC circular on remote communication. Number 6, amendment of Article 4, Section 4, again to include remote communication. Number 7, amendment of Article 4, Section 7 and 12 to align with the provisions of the RCC. Number 8, amendment of Article 4, Section 12, again to align with the provisions of the RCC. Number 9, amendment of Article 5, Section 1 to align with the provisions of the RCC. Number 10, amendment of Article 6, Section 1, which added compliance officer in compliance with the ICA rules. Number 11, amendment of Article 7, Section 1, which added the phrase subject to the rules of ICA Rule 5.1.6 or any amendments thereto on outsourcing delegation or delegation of functions of the fund manager in compliance with the ICA rules. Number 12, amendment of Article 8, Section 1, added the phrase in custodian in compliance with the ICA rules. Number 13, amendment of Article 8, Section 3, added the phrase in auditors in compliance with the ICA rules. Number 14, amendment of Article 9, Section 1, amended statement in compliance with ICA rules. Amendment of Article 10, Section 1, we added provisions in the determination of the net asset value per share in compliance with ICA rules. Number 16, amendment of Article 11, Section 1, we added provisions in compliance with the RCC. Number 17, amendment of Article 11, Section 2, we added provisions in compliance with ICA rules. Number 18, amendment of Article 12, Section 7, we updated provisions in compliance with RCC. All the amendments were made to comply with the RCC and the ICA. The particular descriptions are stated in the definitive information statement or the 20-IS that we filed with the SEC. We are submitting the amendments for the ratification of the stockholders. For the amendment of the bylaws, the vote of the owners of at least a majority of the outstanding capital stock is required. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the ratification of the amendment to the bylaws as approved by the board.
I second the motion.
The host will now launch the poll question. You may cast your vote by clicking on the available options.
We are now opening the voting poll for the amendment to the bylaws. The voting will now be closed. Mr. Chairman,
May I now request the corporate secretary to present the preliminary voting results.
Mr. Chair, based on the preliminary voting results, we have 99.41% who voted in favor, none voted against, and there are no abstentions.
There being a motion duly made and seconded to ratify the board resolution amending the bylaws to conform to the provisions of the revised Corporation Code, Securities Regulation Code, and the Investment Company Act, and their implementing rules and regulations as advised by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the motion is carried. Next in the agenda is the election of the members of the Board of Directors of FMETF to serve for the year 2022 to 2023. Attorney Abelardo Cortez, member of the Nomination Committee, will now explain the nomination procedure under current SEC rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In compliance with the requirements of Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as the FMETF Manual on Corporate Governance, the Nomination Committee was asked to review and evaluate the qualifications of all persons nominated to the board. Pursuant to this mandate, the Nomination Committee reviewed the qualifications of the following nominees to the Board of Directors and hereby certifies that based on the records, they have all the qualifications and none of the disqualification prescribed by law and regulation. The list of nominees of FMETF is contained in the definitive information statement sent out to all stockholders and submitted to the SEC prior to today's meeting. The nominees for the First Metro Philippine Equity Exchange Traded Fund are as follows: Mr. Eduardo Carrion, Mr. Michael Say, Mr. Winston Pexon, Ms. Karen Lisa Roa, Attorney Abelardo Cortez, Dr. Bernardo Villegas, Father Rafael Eloriaga. Attorney Cortez, Dr. Villegas, and Father Eloriaga are nominees for independent directors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Attorney Cortez. Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move that nominees enumerated by the nomination committee member be declared elected to the board of directors of the FMETF.
Second the motion.
The host will now launch the poll question. You may cast your vote by clicking on the available options.
We are now opening the voting poll for the election of directors. The voting will now be closed. Mr. Chairman,
May I now request the corporate secretary to present the preliminary voting results.
Mr. Chairman, based on the voting results, we have 99.41% who voted in favor of all the nominees, none voted against, and there are no abstentions.
Let it be on record that upon nominations duly made and there being no other nominations, the following stockholders were unanimously elected to serve on the board: Mr. Eduardo Carrion, Mr. Michael Sai, Mr. Winston Pexon, Ms. Karen Lisa Roa, Attorney Abelardo Cortez, Dr. Bernardo Villegas, Father Rafael Eloriaga. We are very grateful to our incumbent directors for their continuing invaluable service to the board. Finally, on behalf of the board, may I express gratitude to our valued stockholders for your steadfast loyalty over the years and for your faith and confidence in the company. While unusual times are upon us, we shall, with your support, face the challenges with hope, anchored in divine providence, and with faith in the company's long-standing values of dedication and hard work that has seen the institution through many challenges in its existence. It is our honor and privilege to serve you and this esteemed institution. The next item in the agenda is the appointment of an independent external auditor for the fiscal year 2022. The Audit Committee, in its recent meeting, had approved the appointment of SGV and Company. We now submit this for your ratification. Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chair, I move that the appointment of CSIP Gores Belayo and Company as independent external auditor of FMETF be ratified.
I second the motion.
The host will now launch the poll question. You may cast your vote by clicking on the available options.
we are now opening the voting poll for the appointment of external auditor. The voting will now be closed. Mr. Chairman,
May I now request the corporate secretary to present the preliminary voting results.
Based on the preliminary voting results, we have 99.41% who voted in favor, none voted against, and there are no abstentions.
There being a motion duly made and seconded, and the required votes obtained, the appointment of SGV and Company as independent external auditor of FMETF for the fiscal year 2022 is hereby ratified. Are there any other matters to be taken up?
Mr. Chairman, there are no other matters for consideration of the stockholders.
Stockholders may raise any relevant questions or express an appropriate comment limited to the agenda by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant questions or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. If there are no other matters for approval of the stockholders, we can now adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the meeting of FMETF be adjourned.
I second the motion.
There being no other matters to consider, the year 2022 annual stockholders meeting of FMETF is hereby adjourned. Thank you for coming.
How to start your investment journey with FAMI. Go to www.fami.com.ph and open an account online. Fill out the necessary information. Upload a copy of your valid ID and signature. Here are the list of valid IDs we accept. Attend your online interview. Lastly, make your initial investment in any of our available payment channels. Expect an SMS from FAMI to confirm your account opening and subscription.
Have you heard of a hassle-free and affordable way of investing in mutual funds? Introducing FAMI's monthly investment program, or MIP. Here's a quick guide to help you start your MIP journey with FAMI. Monthly investment program, or what we call MIP, is a hassle-free voluntary investment scheme specifically offered to employees through salary deduction so they can invest easily in mutual funds. The program can help you in the long run for many investment solutions like wealth accumulation, educational planning, retirement planning, and also for wealth distribution. Why invest through MIP? Here are the reasons MIP may help you. Cost averaging strategy. MIP promotes cost averaging strategy. What is cost averaging strategy? This kind of strategy is where investors invest the same fixed amount of money over regular intervals that can help investors potentially yield positive long-term performance and help avoid short-term risks. More affordable and convenient way of investing. With MIP, you don't need to wait until you have a large amount of money to invest, as you can start investing for as low as 1,000 pesos a month. MIP also provides a more convenient way of investing, as the program lets you automatically debit an amount of money directly from your salary, so you don't have to worry on reminding yourself to invest every time you wanted to. This method of the program also helps you instill financial discipline. With this method that MIP is offering, investors get the benefit of compounding and can build long-term wealth creation without sacrificing a lot from the resources they currently have. Disciplined approach to investing. This scheme helps investors to become more disciplined, Because if you invest through MIP, your investment will pay off when the share price improves above your cost. Starting early with MIP and achieve your financial goals. To start your MIP, your company HR must set up an MIP with FAMI. Once opened, you may reach out to your company HR and submit the completely filled out and signed FAMI account opening and MIP forms. Once enrolled, you can now have a more affordable, accessible, and convenient way of investing, depending on your investment objectives and financial needs. FAMI payment methods. How to contact FAMI. To know more about investing in mutual funds or our other programs, you may visit our social media sites or call FAMI through these numbers: 8891 2860 up to 65, or email us at fami@firstmetro.com.ph.